to the record. Yeah, I don't know why he said that, especially considering that I texted him personally and he was like, he was like, yeah, I did my own research afterwards. None of the things that I said about Einstein was wrong. Appreciate the thoughtful criticism. I wrote him a longer response because arguing on here is dumb, but just to summarize, good corrective to the Einstein story that I fully admit to not knowing in advance, though I'm not sure the full details change Hasan's broader critique of Zionism in a meaningful way, whether or not you agree with it. If I had another hour, Hasan, I absolutely would have focused on his China-Russia views, but thought it was more valuable in this particular discussion to dig on the controversy at hand than to do a quicker drive-by on all his views and statements. But again, genuinely appreciate Yair's take. I think fair enough to critique regarding the new medium and incentives, though I would have also argued that many of those incentives exist for columnists and existed even pre-internet age, and that the distinction between capital R reporters and columnists is an important one. Okay. Ben Rhodes spent 2 hours on foreign policy, including Cuba, Russia, China, and Taiwan with Hasan. Yeah, that's like another, that's another side of this as well. You've had Hasan Piker in a Crooked Media podcast 7 times, and not once you've brought up his liberal authoritarianism. It's like, yeah, you know what's really funny about these guys? My position's on Crimea. Do you want to know the most popular American politician who had the exact same position on Crimea? It was Barack Hussein Obama, who happens to be the Pajans' former boss. Okay? What a lot of these liberals, once again, going back to the median voter who doesn't understand what they're fucking saying, who are lost in the sauce, where they're like, oh, we want to advance democratic socialism, but also we want to, move to the center, is that they all love Barack Obama, and Barack Obama's assessment was identical at the time, where it was like, what are we supposed to do? Go to fucking war with Russia because they annexed Crimea in an effort to maintain the Sevastopol base that they have? Like, he chose not to agitate further in that instance. Okay? It's so crazy. And I make a very specific distinction between Crimea and what Russia has done since then. But people seemingly find that to be, unbelievably on Adolf Putler's camp or something. Wait, what was the Einstein correction? The Einstein correction is that Albert Einstein... Yair Rosenberg made it seem like Albert Einstein, I covered it yesterday, he made it seem like Albert Einstein was like super on board with what everything the early Zionist movement was doing, and talked about extensively the first 20 years of Albert Einstein's assessment on Zionism, and which I wasn't talking about at all. I was talking about like Einstein's perspective on Zionism, which would be considered like dangerous and scary by today's standards, okay? Yeah, Einstein had a bit more favorable view of Israel than a 30-second clip may have suggested. Yeah, but even in that 30-second clip, I'm saying that with today's standards, like my assessment on Zionism and Einstein's assessment or his warnings on Zionism were not all that far apart. It's just true. You know? Like his warnings after the initial atrocities in like 1946 and in 1947 that led to the development of the nation state of Israel was that these guys were behaving, and they were behaving like fascists. He signed off on a letter that said as much. You know, he has at times critiqued what Irgun was doing specifically. Menachem Begin coming to the United States of America, he signed off on a letter that said like, this guy is repulsive, and it's so over. What do you mean? Yeah, it's very funny that like Yair Rosenberg's like, I wrote my my undergraduate thesis on this, and then he just like fails to address the point that I was making at all. It may be that their thoughts on the Democrat Party moving to the center might be because the median voters think they're grifted to the right too much. No. Wasn't the main correction that he wasn't asked to be the first, but instead the second president of Israel? Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, I got that wrong. The American people want cultural, social conservatism and economic socialism. They want the aesthetics of the Brady Bunch. That's what their good old days are. Mind you, it's mostly white people. Yeah, Einstein would be pro-modern Israel take, gives the same energy as Republicans saying MLK would have been a January 6th. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not that it fucking matters at the end of the day. In Einstein's letters, he would be like, it's so cool what Israel is doing, and I hope they don't do Nazi stuff. No, he was like, I'm worried that they're doing, Nazi stuff. And also, we can't do that kind of stuff. We're Jewish. The Holocaust happened. What are you guys talking about? I don't know what he was saying at the time, but, something along those lines. Where he was like, this is, we need to do, free immigration into this territory and have a commitment to binational state where we have to play nice with the Arab inhabitants of the land, directly at odds with the attitude represented by Zionists initially, which was this is a land without people for a people without land. You feel me? Yeah, he was very specifically opposed to an ethno-state, which is what Zionism has created. So I don't know. I don't know where the fuck people were coming from, Yeah, Einstein was for a secular state that allowed open immigration for Jews, but didn't care if the majority was Palestinian. Any modern person who says they want a state that has no demographic majority Jewish population would be considered anti-Zionist. Exactly. That is the main point of contention. That's why they keep yelling at Zohar Mamdani too. It's very frustrating. Anyway, it's not like Einstein is like, you have to agree or disagree with Einstein or whatever. There's plenty of intelligent people that had the wrong assessment on Israel at the time as well. MLK was one of them, right? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I was just using that as a complementary assessment to my worldview that a lot of people get frustrated by. Einstein opposed Zionist colonization of Palestine and predicted the current catastrophe. Yeah. When a real and final catastrophe should befall us in Palestine, the first responsible for it would be the British, and the second responsible for it would be the terrorist organizations built up from our own ranks. I am not willing to see anybody associated with those misled and criminal people. A few weeks before the creation of the State of Israel, Shepard Rifkin, a New York-based representative of the Stern Group, a Zionist paramilitary organization founded in mandatory Palestine, requested that representatives of the group meet with Albert Einstein of the United States, the greatest Jewish figure of the time. According to journalist I.F. Stone, Einstein's response was unequivocal. Yeah. And I literally said it in that conversation as well. If you listen, I chose my words very carefully. The only thing I got wrong was the idea that Einstein was the invited to be the first president. That's not the case. I guess it was the second. And it's so funny. It's so funny to take a look at this this statement and be like, no, he would love modern Israel. Like, what do you mean? Can't you tell? He definitely wants he definitely cares about the demographic concerns to make sure that there's a Jewish ethno state. It's just ridiculous. It's ironic that the people that are claiming that I'm bastardizing Einstein's perspective, Yair Rosenberg said that, are the ones who are literally are the ones who are literally chopping up his the the totality of his assessment to imply that he would be in favor of the modern state of Israel. He would just see through the complexities and the nuances and still end up on the side of it's good that there is a fascist state advancing the fascist cause of maintaining a Jewish majority ethno state that's like dominating the Arab inhabitants of the land, which is something that he was against. Why did Einstein refuse the presidency of Israel? By Princeton Alumni Weekly. The article, One Jew's Journey, starts with a comment from David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, met with Einstein in Princeton, hoping to convince the venerable scientist to be the first president of to be the president of Israel. Einstein refused, and the quotes below might give us on clues why he refused. In a December 4th, 1984 letter to the New York Times, Einstein, among other 28 prominent members of the Jewish community, wrote that the then current Israeli political party, the Freedom Party, led by Menachem Begin, was a political party closely akin to its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazis and the fascist parties. It is inconceivable that those who oppose fascism throughout the world, if correctly informed as to Mr. Begin's political record and perspectives, could add their names and support their movement he represents. Referring to the massacre of Arabs in Jews in the village of Deir Yassin, the letter said, the Jewish terrorists, far from being ashamed of their act, were proud of this massacre, publicized it widely. The Deir Yassin incident exemplifies the characters and actions of the Freedom Party. Further describing the Freedom Party, the letter stated it includes an admixture of ultranationalism, religious mysticism, and racial superiority, and that it bore the unmistakable stamp of a fascist party for whom terrorism against Jews, Arabs, and British alike, and misrepresentation are means, and a leader state is the goal. The letter ended by saying that America should turn its back on Begin and not support this latest manifestation of fascism. But there's much more. 10 years prior to this letter, Einstein declared at New York's Commodore Hotel that a Jewish state with borders and an army to protect those borders ran counter to the essential nature of Judaism. Also in 1946, he told the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry on the Palestinian issue, I cannot understand why it, a Jewish state, is needed. It is connected with narrow-minded and economic obstacles. I believe it's bad. In 1938 speech, Einstein said, I should much rather see the reasonable agreement with the Arabs on the basis of living together in peace than a creation of a Jewish state. And in a quote dating back to the late 1920s, Einstein declared, should we be unable to find a way to honest cooperation and honest pacts with the Arabs, then we have learned absolutely nothing during our 2,000 years of suffering and deserve all that will come to us. Many of these and other quotes can be found in the book Einstein on Israel and Zionism, his provocative ideas about the Middle East by Fred Jerome. Does Rabbi Gil Steinlauf believe it's anti-Semitic to single out Israel because it's the only Jewish state? If so, does he also believe that Einstein was a Jew hater? And would he assign the same description to one who verbalized the same sentiments as did Einstein in the above quotes? Who do you think is closer? A guy who criticizes the current nation state of Israel on exactly the same boundaries that Einstein did even back then and had consistently over and over again for multiple decades, or a guy who currently defends the current nation state of Israel but will like lean into the side of criticism to say, oh, it's just a manifestation of the far right expressions of Israeli politics and nothing deeply problematic about the inception and the continuation of the demographic needs of an ethno state, a demographic majority. In his criticisms of what I brought up about Einstein's take on Israel, his warnings have come true, which was my position. Here, that's what I did. I also did directly talk to John as well, but I should, I'll still put that here as well. Furthermore, Albert Einstein, a passionate supporter of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, was even offered the presidency in Israel in 1952, would now be branded anti-Semitic for criticizing Israeli policies under today's IHRA framework that Harvard University just adopted. Yeah. He has said this over and over again. I mean, I already talked about this as well. This is from January 21st, 1946. This is before Deir Yassin. Dear sir, I have served as witness before the Anglo-American Inquiry Commission on Palestine for the sole purpose to act in favor of our just cause. But it is, of course, impossible to prevent distortion by the press. I am in favor of Palestine being developed as Jewish homeland, but not as a separate state. It seems to me a matter for simple common sense that we cannot ask to be given the political rule over Palestine where 2/3 of the population are not Jewish. What we can and should ask is a secured binational status in Palestine with free immigration. If we ask more, we are damaging our own cause, and it is difficult for me to grasp that our Zionists are taking such an intransigent position, which can only impair our cause. I think it's truly disingenuous to present Einstein as being in favor of like the modern state of Israel, given the amount of information that we do have about what he fucking said and what he warned about what Zionism was turning into. Anyway, unfortunately, the first edition of his text published by a New York publishing house had a very small print run, was never promoted or made into an ebook, and was sold out in no time. That's why Barca Books has published a new edition with the agreement of Jocelyn Jerome, the author's widow. It was in Germany in the 1920s, a time of rampant anti-Semitism, when the theory of relativity was attacked as Jewish science, that Einstein was drawn to the Zionist movement. It was not until 1914, when he arrived in Germany, that he discovered for the first time that he was a Jew, a discovery he attributed to more to Gentiles than Jews. Before that, he had seen himself as a member of the human species. He called himself a cultural Zionist, but as early as 1921, Kurt Blumenfeld, a Zionist activist sent to recruit Einstein, warned Chaim Weizmann, the future president of Israel, about the great scientist. Einstein, as you know, is no Zionist, and I ask you not to try to make him a Zionist or to attach him to our organization. Einstein, who leans to socialism, feels very involved with the cause of Jewish labor and Jewish workers. I heard that you expect Einstein to give speeches. Please be quite careful with that. Einstein often says things out of naivete which are unwelcome by us. Yeah. I am not sure why Yair thinks Einstein's support of Jewish diaspora in the 2 decades leading to the Holocaust is somehow a tacit approval of settler colonialism. It's disingenuous at best, and I think a bastardization, a deliberate bastardization at worst, because not only was he saying like, hey, we should find a place where Jews are not harmed leading up to the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, he literally said, hey, the place that we have found where Jews should not be harmed, the guys who are designing the society are behaving like the guys who did the Holocaust. What more do you want to fucking hear from a guy who was like very critical? Very critical of like even the early the Zionist brigades and the violence that they subjected the Arab inhabitants to. That's it. What the fuck do you think that guy's position would look like for that guy who's a socialist? What would his position be on like finding out about the existence of Otzma Yehudit, Itamar Ben-Gvir and the like? What do you think he would say? Apart from Einstein's supposed naivete, Blumenfeld could not have said it better. Einstein would be a constant obstacle to the Zionist project of the colonization of Palestine and the creation of the State of Israel until his death in 1955. Here are some examples of the positions he took. His exchanges with Chaim Weizmann, the future president of Israel, illustrate how important Einstein was to the Zionists, but more importantly, how his views differed from theirs. In a letter to Weizmann on November 25th, 1929, he wrote, if we are not able to find an honest cooperation and honest pacts with the Arabs, then we have learned nothing during our 2,000 years of suffering and deserve the fate which befall us. The idea of the fate which befalls us occurs often. In 1929, he seems to have already foreseen the nation state that the Zionists dreamed of creating without honest cooperation and honest pacts with their Palestinian neighbors would become what it is today, namely the most dangerous place in the world for Jews to live. a few weeks later, on December 14, 1924, he wrote to Selig Brodetsky of the Zionist organization in London, "I'm happy that we have no power. If national pigheadedness proves strong enough, then we will knock our brains out as we deserve." Furthermore, Leon Simon, one of the early editors and translators, wrote, "There is in Professor Einstein's nationalism no room for any kind of aggressiveness or chauvinism. For him, the domination of Jew over Arab in Palestine, or the perpetuation or a state of mutual hostility between the two peoples, would mean the failure of Zionism." Do you know how many Zionists early on that saw the horrors of the Holocaust, especially, okay, or were close in proximity to those horrors, had an identical viewpoint to Albert Einstein? I will be interviewing one of these people when I go to Vancouver. His name is Gabor Mate. Okay, Gabor Mate was a baby in a concentration camp, in a death camp. He survived the Holocaust. He's a Holocaust survivor. His early assessment of Zionism was not dissimilar to Albert Einstein. Okay, he was like, we need a place. We need a place of refuge, a place of safety for all Jews. Okay, this is a normal point. This was why. This is how Zionism was able to take root. Gabor Mate is an avowed critic of the current state of Israel and also an anti-Zionist. Okay? He talks very openly about his own development, his evolution of his worldview on Israel and Zionism in particular. The idea that Albert Einstein would be in favor of the modern fascist nation state of Israel when he very clearly kept criticizing the direction that the modern nation state of Israel was heading in is unbelievably disingenuous. Unlike a vast majority of Zionists, Einstein's support for a possible Jewish homeland, not a state, was not limited to Palestine. There was nothing religious in his commitment. Some Zionists advocated for the establishment of such a homeland in China, Peru, or Azerbaijan in the Soviet Union, but in full agreement with the state authorities and populations in each case. Einstein supported these steps. For example, the Jewish homeland of Azerbaijan in the Soviet Union after the Second World War, he wrote, "We must not forget that in those years of atrocious persecutions of Jewish people, Soviet Russia has been the only great nation who has saved hundreds of thousands of Jewish lives. The enterprise to settle 30,000 Jewish war orphans in Azerbaijan and secure for them in this way a satisfying and happy future is new proof for the humane attitude of Russia towards our Jewish people. In helping in this cause, we will contribute in a very effective way to the salvation of the remnants of European Jewry." In the pivotal years between, he was also kind of pro-Stalin as well. No, but that's, that's not quite accurate. He was, as far as I know, a baby in Hungary whose family passed to another family to be hidden away. I don't think he was in a death camp. I thought he was in a concentration camp. I might be wrong. Sorry about that. For Gabor Mate. In the pivotal years before the end of the war and his death in 1955, Einstein was outspoken about the Jewish State Project. Invited to testify before the Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry on Palestine in Washington, D.C. in January 1946, Einstein answered unequivocally when asked about the possible state of Israel versus a cultural homeland. "I have never been in favor of a state." In March 1947, I.Z. David, a member of the Irgun terrorist group led by Menachem Begin, sent him a questionnaire to which he responded sharply and clearly. Question: "What is your opinion about the establishment of free national Jewish Palestine?" Einstein: "Jewish national home? Yes. Jewish national Palestine? No. I favor a free binational Palestine at a later date after agreement with the Arabs." Question: "Opinion about the partition of Palestine and Chaim Weizmann's proposals regarding a partition?" Einstein: "I am against partition." On the question of the alliance between British and American imperialism, Einstein harbored no illusions. "It seems to me that our beloved Americans are now patterning their foreign policy on the model of the Germans, since they appear to have inherited the latter's inflatedness and arrogance. Apparently, they also want to take on the role England has played up till now. They refuse to learn from each other and learn little even from their own harsh experience. What has been implanted into the heads from early youths is rooted more firmly than experience and reasoning. The English are yet another good example of this. Their old-fashioned methods of suppressing the masses by using indigenous, unscrupulous elements of the economic upper class will soon cost them their whole empire. But they are incapable to bring themselves to change with their methods, no matter whether it's the Tories or the socialists. With the Germans, it was exactly the same. All of this would be good and well, except for the fact that it is so sad for the better elements and the oppressed." again, a socialist back then, at the inception of the USSR, was a very different kind of socialist than what you would associate in the Western world with socialism. Okay? Back then, there was a very significant approach to socialism that revolved around anti-imperialism. That is gone now. Okay. And as a matter of fact, the overwhelming amount of friction that I have with even people who are self-identifying socialists in the Western world revolves around that concept, because socialism also means you are anti-empire. You are an anti-imperialist, or at least historically, that's what it meant. Nowadays, however, people just think socialism is modest social democracy in the Western world with no re-examination of the unequal exchange that we have with the third world. Okay? That's a very significant disagreement that a lot of people refuse to identify, refuse to deal with the contradictions on. Modern leftists are anti-imperial. You are just counting social democrats as leftists? Nah. Okay, if modern leftists are anti-imperialist, then there's like 11 of us, okay? As for the political ancestors of the current Netanyahu government, Einstein tore into them and their political parties, particularly in the New York Times. When Menachem Begin came to New York in late 1948, Einstein, Hannah Arendt, and other Jewish intellectual figures in the United States published a letter denouncing his visit and the organization he led, calling it a political party very close in its organization, methods, and political philosophy and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. One example they cited was the massacre of 240 men, women, and children in the Palestinian village of Deir Yassin. Okay? Oh, wow. Down to the fucking actual village that I identified. Einstein would repeat his accusation until his death in 1955. These people are Nazis in their thoughts and actions. Anyone who says today in the mainstream media is immediately labeled an anti-Semite and blacklisted. It is unbelievable that Yair Rosenberg went on The Atlantic, a magazine whose editor-in-chief is literally a former concentration camp prison guard from Israel, okay, and wrote that article. And his key point on the article, was that I actually bastardized Einstein's nuanced perspective on Israel when he did that for selfish gain. It is common knowledge that when Chaim Weizmann died in 1952, the Prime Minister of Israel offered the presidency of Israel to Albert Einstein. Less well known, however, is the reason Einstein gave for his refusal. I would have to say to the Israeli people things they would not like to hear. Even less well known is Ben-Gurion's statement. Tell me what to do if he says yes. I've had to offer him the post because it was impossible not to. But if he accepts, we are in trouble. Hundreds, if not thousands of people are being accused of anti-Semitism or fired from their jobs because they dare to criticize the state of Israel, call it an apartheid state, and denounce the genocide of Palestinians. May they rest assured they are in good company, because if Einstein were alive today, he would be on the front lines demonstrating with them. Yeah, this is most of the quotes are from Einstein on Israel and Zionism by Fred Jerome. Okay. Yeah, the problem with Yair Rosenberg's Einstein story by Hasan Piker, it's just it's so ridiculous, and you can create overwhelming amounts of noise leaning into, ironically, the anti-intellectualist feelings, the anti-intellectualist attitude, which Yair Rosenberg blames me for, ironically enough, when he is doing that. Anyway. Write his as a response, bro. That would be legit. Yeah. Link this article to Yair's tweet and call him out for bastardizing Einstein's views and manipulating in public. it's ironic that I bastardized Einstein's views on Zionism and Israel for my purpose, for my ideological purpose in this article, when he quite literally did just that. Here are some choice quotes from Einstein on Israel and Zionism. You make up your own mind. Okay, Einstein, and you get the same treatment. Select quotes to bend what you're saying. That's quite flattering. No, that's not Einstein and me. That's just like, people will always have their own political goals, their own ideological goals, and in service of advancing those ideological goals, they will consistently bastardize their opposition's framework. They will consistently bastardize their opposition's message. Okay, it's not surprising to me at all. It's something that I expect. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. It is what it is, okay? Oh, I said ronic instead of ironic. Boom. All right, I fixed it. I fixed the typo. I fixed it. But once again, we must always seek truth from facts, and we must always say the truth, okay? Remember that, because at the end of the day, the historical record will always show where you stood on these issues, and that all of the overwhelming amounts of silliness, bastardizations of your framework, bastardizations of your thought, all of that will be cleared when the dust is settled, okay? Just as for years and years, up until the last couple of years, people would hear my perspective on Israel and would say, how dare you say such horrible things? You must be a Jew hater. And now people are much more understanding of where I'm coming from, right? History has vindicated us and our position. If I were to have stood idly by and worried about the way that people will perceive what I'm saying, then I would not have been able to convince. I would not have been able to convince people at all. If others also did not have the bravery to say the truth at a time when lies were a much more favorable position to take, advancing lies would have preserved your career and things like that. If many others refuse to be, if many others refuse to say the truth for the last couple of years, we would not have seen a sea change, right? Anyway, that's why I don't really care when all of these, when people are like, oh, his perspective is one that we his perspective is one that we don't approve of, or oh, Hasan has very favorable views. Democrats should stay away from him. Okay, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I'm gonna keep saying the truth. You don't have to agree with it, but it's still the truth, and you can't change that.